Barry Diller has always been a maverick, and the pandemic is no exception.
My instinct is that as the virus and the threat of it recedes, which at some point it will, then I think that behavior returns to the norm. Why wouldn't it?
I'm Erik Schatzker. Welcome to my front row interview with the change agent behind Expedia, IAC, and Match Group, Barry Diller. Barry, you've had a few months to think about how the pandemic changes the ways we live, the ways we work. Does life go back to normal?
I don't know. I must say, we're living in the eye of this. We've certainly lost all objectivity, as you do when you're in the middle of something. Hard to project. My instinct is that as the virus and the threat of it recedes, which at some point it will, then I think that behavior returns to the norm. Why wouldn't it? Now, there are some things that we have learned. I think probably handshaking may be gone for a long period of time, and close hugging and things like that might too. Aspects of work, we've certainly learned about what we're doing, Zoom. We've certainly learned to work from home, so to speak. I do not, though, believe that there will be the most basic changes in the workplace. I think that workplace work is better. The serendipity of moving among people, the atmosphere of it, the lengths that companies have gone to make their offices, certainly in the last, 15 years, 20 years or so, just the organization of offices has gotten so much more sophisticated and thoughtful about social interchange. We just finished building for our sins a new campus in Seattle for 15,000 people that we spent over $1 billion. You could say our timing was not exactly the best, but in fact, all of the thoughtfulness that went into that work environment in so many different areas, I think is very good for the work itself. So I'm encouraging our own people, both at IAC and Expedia, to plan on back to work in offices as a mandatory thing. Maybe we change the work week some. I've thought that the idea of a 4-day work week, or not a 4-day work week, but a 4-day in-office week and a 5th possibly working remote may make some sense, though many people have told me that doesn't really work that easily. But generally, I think that that certainly this concept of social distancing is crazy. It is necessary for the moment, but as a long-term thing, we're not going to reconfigure our offices for social distancing. We'll do what we think is wise and sensible for the health of our colleagues. But the very concept in urban centers that you're not kind of packed tight. You see people, in any urban center, in the late afternoon, you see streets crowded with people. I think that's going to return.
So tell me, Barry, why are so many CEOs, and you talk to plenty of them, so taken with the idea that we can shrink our corporate footprint? We need less real estate. We don't have to travel for business as much. People can work from home, and cities are doomed. Why are they so taken with those ideas?
It's of the moment. It's kind of the, new ice cream flavor. I think conventions and people getting together en masse is going to return. Now, it won't return until it can return safely, but it will return. We cannot live in this moment where we project the future based upon present circumstance.
2019 was a record year for Expedia, $12 billion in revenue. Any idea when we go back to when Expedia gets back there based on the trajectory, assuming, of course, there's a vaccine at some point?
Yes, of course. Look, a month ago, we were at minus 95% of gross bookings, sales. We're now around 70%. Now, going from 95 to 70%, if you look at it, that's really lovely. As a progression.
You're still down 70.
But you're still down 70%. I think that, again, this is difficult to do. You certainly, and why I find comical reporting from the year 2020 for anybody about anything. It's one reason we abandoned guidance, because this year, the only thing worth anyone reporting is their liquidity. Other than that, who cares? It's really irrelevant. The question is when.
Right.
I certainly think travel is going to get back, because if there's life, there is travel. Corporate's going to lag further behind. But I think that the recovery beginning, which has already begun, will accelerate through the rest of the year, assuming no exogenous craziness. And in 21, we'll get back, I'm not saying we'll get back to 100%, but I think somewhere between a recovery of 50 to 75% is reasonable next year.
So 25% revenue or 50% revenue in 2021 means you have to operate, I presume, on a much smaller cost base. You guys were talking about taking out costs before the pandemic. I have to presume that that's a much bigger job now.
Yes, it is. That's reality.
And how do you do it? Right? You've got $6 billion a year in marketing spend. You've got 25,000 employees. Where do you what do you take out?
What we've really done is we've done basically two things. We first of all ensured ourselves that we had enough liquidity to last us to any of the most dire projections of how long travel would be affected. And the second thing we did is we thought, don't let the crisis go to waste. Let us now reorganize the company in all sorts of ways so that we come out of this a much stronger enterprise.
One of the biggest debates, not just in this country, but around the world, is over how fast to reopen the economy. Barry, who in government do you think has found that perfect, if not perfect, the right balance of growth on the one hand and public safety on the other?
Well, certainly our national government has not. I'm sympathetic to people pushing and saying we've got to get back to work. I wish we had a national rulemaking that said, well, this is exactly how you will do it. Most likely it is the wearing of masks as a mandatory application whenever you're in situations with other people. But because that was not done, these reopenings have been bastardized, and I don't know that I wish I could tell you. The only solution I can think of, other than shutting down again, is to say, okay, it's a national law.
It's a tough time for America, Barry. If there isn't a vaccine in the near future and it isn't widely available, what happens in the next few months? How does it play out for this country?
Well, I'm always an optimist, and I of course I can't tell you if what you say, if the conditions continue which is spikes that are unmanageable, we will have to shut down again. There'll be no choice but to do it. And as for the people who are most hurt by this, the government is going to have to support them. Full stop. I mean, you do get into situations where it's better to get paid for unemployment than the job you had. That has to kind of reach an equilibrium. But in fact, there's no way around this. We cannot have economic collapse at the local level. We will continue to print money and give it to them. I presume we will.
Barry Sternlicht, the real estate investor, has a dark vision for the future of New York City. He told me all the wealthy people are going to leave because of tax rates and because of crime, and that property values will plummet. What do you think?
Well, I'm fond of Barry, and he's smart. I think he's wrong. Well, I think New York has, at the top end, has been overbuilding for a few years, and that's an inevitable contraction. I think that New York, yes, some wealthy people, by the way, not in the thousands and thousands, but yeah, some wealthy people are moving to Florida, where I think Mr. Sternlicht is, living a more pleasant, so to speak, life than in the big city, except that it depends upon your definition of pleasant. I've been a lot in the Southeast, in Florida and whatever, and they're very nice places. I've lived in Los Angeles off and on for most of my life, and it's very pleasant to live in Los Angeles. There is nothing like the heartbeat of New York City.
So you're coming back. You're going to live here.
There's nothing like it for ambition. There's nothing like it for stimulus. There's nothing like it for just pure vibrancy. And New York, it will go through its period. But in some cases, I think this is, kind of good for New York. Why? Because I think that rents possibly will go lower. And that means more creative people who are trying to make it in the world will come to New York and birth a, different kind of stimulus. The big city is the big city, some people like it. And not some people, enormous numbers of people congregate in urban places. And there are very valid reasons for it that are not going away.
Barry, the pandemic has had the effect of making big tech so much bigger. You've competed with big tech for years. Is it time to start regulating Amazon, Facebook, Google, or perhaps even breaking those companies up?
Yeah, I'm not so sure I believe in breakup as an effective, as being effective. But I've been saying for many years now that regulation must come as these businesses grow ever larger, and I'm particularly thinking in this case about Google, but the others as well, as they become, Google is the only actual monopoly. The others have varying levels of competition, but they're absolutely, when you have monopoly power, you have to have regulation. And I think in the next couple of years, we'll probably get closer to it than we've ever been. I think that's healthy.
A growing number of companies are boycotting ad spending on Facebook over that company's policies on hate speech. Is that the right thing to do? Are you doing the same thing?
No. No, we're not. Look, we're not going to obviously support what we think is hate speech, and we're pretty careful about that. I've been I'm very much a supporter of Mark Zuckerberg. I think think he's obviously brilliant, but also I think he's completely decent. I thought that his policy of saying, I'm not going to regulate essentially political advertising was wise, because I think it's almost impossible to try and regulate what people say politically, either for or against something. And I'm speaking of the candidates themselves and the apparatus around them and all of that. I just think that's sliding into a bad business. So, however, when there is identified hate speech, and I think they are addressing it, of course you're going to try and not promulgate that using the tools that you can use. I don't believe in boycotts. I think a quote boycott against Facebook is ill-advised and ill-considered. And you know, I'm hopeful. I think that Facebook is addressing the extreme forms of speech. But the truth is that, and you find it in any group of people, more than two, which is you're going to have opinion. When people have can have voice to their opinion and are amplified by our internet communications miasma throughout the world, you're going to get a lot. I mean, go on Slack or go on any channel of your own colleagues, give them anonymous voice. They're going to say terrible things about you. Not all of them, but some of them will. Get used to it.
Barry, Dara Khosrowshahi was your CEO at Expedia for many years. Why do you think he struggled at Uber?
My God, how could he not struggle at Uber? Give that little operation to anybody at the time he got it. I think he's done a fantastic job. He had a company that was in revolt against itself. Huge issues all over the place. It was a great idea, grew fantastically under its founder, grew wildly aggressively. Dara came in and changed the culture of that company with great speed and determination. He was on his way towards profitability. He was, I think, going to break even in the fourth quarter, which was a tremendous achievement. I don't know, the struggle of Uber has been a struggle of resurrection from what is a fantastic base business. They built up under Dara, they built up their Uber Eats business, which is a leader and will be a leader in the future. So good marks for Mr. Khosrowshahi. I mean, don't judge him on the market, on taking the company public and having it get, crashed because of all sorts of other things. Just judge him on the enduring value of the company he's building.
You once told me you'd never sold a share except to pay taxes. And I presume, given what I've seen, that's still true. And you're nodding your head, so I take it is. Barry, Bloomberg estimates your wealth at something north of $5 billion. What's the long-term plan for that money?
Topic of conversation within my family. It's in several parts. It certainly is in philanthropy, where we have made commitments for our family, our living family, and actually some of our unborn family, about what they must do philanthropically for the wealth they'll inherit. But I have not ever agreed with people I greatly respect, Mr. Buffett and Mr. Gates, that you should not pass on wealth because it has deleterious effects on all sorts of things in ambition. I have another standard, which is you really should understand the character of those you are bequeathing wealth to. And if you feel they are of good character and responsible, then I have not only know, I feel there's nothing wrong and there's some right in passing on wealth. I don't think, again, if you know who you're giving it to and what their character is, you can make judgments. I do not think the giving or not giving of wealth has anything particularly to do, again, to the individual with ambition. And there are examples all over the place, good and bad in this. But I think you have a responsibility, as our family has, for certainly giving over half of our wealth philanthropically. And it gets complicated when you're dealing with the unborn, which in today's world, when you deal with these matters, actually you're kind of forced to do. It's not without its complications, but that's the best answer I can give you.
Barry, you told me in 2017 about meeting Mike Pompeo, who was then director of the CIA, at the Allen and Company conference in Sun Valley. And at the time you said Pompeo's decency and his grasp of issues made you feel better about the Trump administration. In fact, the words you used were you felt you were in good hands. We've got a few months left of the Trump administration, at least into the election, and then we'll see what happens. How do you feel right now?
I've been disappointed. Listen, I can't help but be disappointed by anybody in this administration other than the Treasury Secretary, who I think has done a very, very good job. And I'm sure there are other people who've done some good work. But this is a terrible administration. And I suspect the closer you are to the president, the more harshly, again, with the exception to at least my knowledge of Mnuchin, the more harshly you should be judged. And I'm just hopeful that my worry is, I think if the election were held today, according to polls, et cetera, I think we would have a change. I'm frightened that something will come between now and November that might change that. Nothing could be more important than changing this administration.
Why?
Because how do I do this quickly? Because it is rotten at the top. And I can't go much on with, if you don't know that, you're not sentient. So what is the point of saying it? It is rotten at the top. And when you have a situation like that, you know, we've had good presidents, bad presidents. We've never had a rotten president. We now have one, and he should be gone.
Well, we have between now and November to see how it plays out. Barry, I want to thank you very much for taking this time to talk to me.
Nice to be with you.